The suburb of Bertram's in Johannesburg is what you would term a rough neighbourhood. There are gangs, drug lords, prostitutes and destitute squatters. It was here that I lived and worked with the street children. I occupied an apartment and an office in a block of apartments shared with the Catholic Psychological Services as well as the Catholic Community Development Services. One particular early morning at around 3 a.m., I was urged awake to confront two armed men hovering over me in the bedroom. My reaction was pure lizard brain. Kill! With a terrible growl of a cornered wild animal, I bounded up from the bed and attacked. Kill! By blessed chance the intruders fled. The anger, fear and regret that I experienced afterwards would have little to do with those intruders. To kill! This was what I was capable of. This was what lay hidden within me. I was shocked, mortified, and deeply humbled. Go from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. But God's response is always the same. Do not be afraid. Through the years since, I have discovered that these are truly moments of grace. To see ourselves as we are, this is grace. Yes, God is within me, and light is within me also. But there is another side. It is against the revelation of the shameful reality of our hidden faults and sins that God's grace becomes and is something beautiful, awesome, and overwhelming. Without this revelation of our tangled motives and glib self-righteous anger, continually at work feeding the ego to keep us satisfied with the ego's constant, false assurances, I am right, I am good, I am better than those others, I am deserving of success and happiness and the fulfillment of my desires and dreams. This is the path that leads to claiming for ourselves the right to designate good and evil according to our own judgment, claiming for ourselves equality with God. This illusion of self-righteousness will always keep us static, block our development, make us unteachable and incapable of true unselfish love. Suffering and sorrow are most often the key to the door of a hardened and prideful heart. Suffering and sorrow lead us into that compassionate stance that knows our own need of mercy and forgiveness, knows our need of the healing hand of Jesus the Christ. If we allow this to become our hearts to become soft and vulnerable, our suffering partakes in the story of Jesus the Christ, in love, vulnerability, suffering, and ultimately overcoming death through service, renunciation of self and status. We can only imagine what was going through Peter's mind as the truth and goodness of Jesus was revealed to him on the lake of Gennesaret. We do know that he experienced this revelation that led to an acknowledgement of his own sinfulness. Go from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. Here we see the Jewish understanding that sin and holiness cannot inhabit the same space. Holiness will totally annihilate any evil and darkness in its presence. Being in the presence of holiness is a fearful and dangerous thing. For better, far better, to be out of sight and out of mind. The words of Jesus that Peter heard earlier had sparked Peter's conscience. Perhaps it was the spontaneous outbursts of anger that we see in the nature of Peter that must have calloused over the regret and sadness that he accompanied a lifetime of difficulty, losses, struggles against good and evil, and yes, failures. I rather like this about Peter, so much like us, angry and fearful, jumping to conclusions, subject to procrastinating, yet at the same time filled with enthusiasm and great empathy. This is the nature of Peter, who betrays the Lord so many, many times, suffers guilt and remorse, cries bitterly, but returns each time to the source of grace and love that he experienced that first day in the encounter with Jesus, an experience of awe. Awe is the power that will release us from the terrible fear and her sister anxiety that can grip our minds. This is the call that turns our awareness towards the sacred coming from a profound sense of wonder, beauty, reverence, and humility in the presence of a power that is greater than we are. Awe helps us to create a genuine vision of life's meaning that leads us through our fear and anxiety. Without a foundation of this beacon of true awe, we can so easily try to manipulate religion, spirituality, those around us, and even, yes, God, who is the source of all that is good, beautiful, and true. Not every emotion of apparent awe is, however, genuinely based on what is truly holy, respectful, and loving, nor will it nurture the loving kindness and humility on which joy, peace, and spiritual freedom depend. Discernment is needed. Discernment is the ability to decide between truth and error, right and wrong. Discernment is the process of making careful distinctions in our thinking about truth. Discernment needs the light of God's Word, who is the person of Jesus. St. Paul teaches us that it is the responsibility of every Christian to be discerning. He tells us, "But examine everything carefully. Hold fast to that which is good. Abstain from every form of evil." The Apostle John issues a similar warning when he says, "Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone into our world." According to the New Testament, discernment is not optional for the believer. It is a necessity. The key to living an uncompromising life of integrity lies in our ability to exercise discernment in each and every area of our lives. Failure to distinguish between truth and error leaves the Christian subject to illusion, fear, and anxiety. Discernment is an area where many of us stumble. Often we exhibit little ability to measure the things we are taught against the standard of God's Word, and we inadvertently engage in all kinds of compromise, convoluted decision-making, and distressing behavior. Without God's Word, we are unarmed and defenseless. Discernment intersects the Christian life at every point, and God's Word provides us with the needed discernment about every issue of our life. According to Peter, God has granted to us everything pertaining to God, life and godliness, through the true knowledge of Him who called us by His own glory and excellence. Do not be afraid, I am with you always. May the Lord grant you His peace.